Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everyone. Tracy here. Welcome back to another episode. I am so thankful to have you joining me for another fantastic conversation. But before we dive right in, a quick word from this week's sponsor. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, I am so excited to have Sally Murfet joining us, and she's all the way over in Australia. Sally, how are you doing?
I'm going great. Thanks, Tracy. Great to be here. I'm joining you from Tasmania, which is a little island off Australia. So
Oh,
thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you. I am recording late. You are recording early. This is going to be a fun conversation. We're talking about, I'm going to call it building farm spirit, building team spirit, working with our team.
Mm.
And as we'll dive in, I'll introduce you in a second. But when I bring on individuals about leadership and team building, I'm always very sensitive. And I know you relate to this, Sally. When we say team or leadership, when there's people watching in our audience, we have everybody from like leaders, corporate leaders in big agriculture companies, investors, real estate agents, big farming operations, and then operations that are dad and son, dad and daughter, mom, all the versions of that. So I always like to make the disclaimer when we do leadership and team oriented episodes. To me, when I hear those words, team can be a literal team in a corporate setting, or team can be your son, daughter, wife, whoever that is. And leadership, even me as a farmer and a entrepreneur, sometimes I'm like, leadership, I don't care about leadership. Let's just get stuff done. But whoever we work with, it's a team. And if we are the boss making decisions, we are a leader, whether we like it or not. Do you agree with that, Sally?
1000% absolutely. And I think what you've just said then actually reflects the scale of, or the spectrum of clients that I work with, from the mum and dad operators right through to the large multinational corporate businesses. So yeah, everything in between, whether it's you're a team,
Yeah.
whether it's mum and dad and son and daughter, or whether it's a global or a national company.
Okay, good. So, for those of you tuning in, Sally is the Chief Inspiration Officer with her company Inspire Ag. I love the title, I love the company name. So, Sally, again, welcome to the show. I'm excited to chat about this and serve our audience. Okay, Sally. So I'm excited for this conversation. Before we dive in and talk about everything that we want to cover today, can you talk a little bit about who you are, your background, why you care about agriculture, and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, amazing. Look, I'm really passionate about the people side of agriculture. I'm also really passionate about creating farm teams that perform well together. And what I love about what I do is connecting that human and business performance together. I'm super passionate about making sure that each individual that's a part of the team, whether you're a mum and dad operator or a son and siblings and whatever that farm team looks like, making sure that each person in that team is seen, valued, and heard. That's what gets me out of bed every morning to do what I do. And I work with farmers and agribusinesses right across Australia to help them connect that people and business performance. And I do that in the areas of leadership, team development, and succession, or otherwise known as transition planning. And I, yeah, I'm I love what I do. It doesn't feel like work. I love what I do.
Oh, I love it. I love what I do too. And I love having conversations with people that are so passionate about their slice of agriculture and helping farmers. So I'm going to dive in and pivot right off of what you said. Your passion is the people as the power of agriculture. And sometimes I want to say something about that quick and then let you take it away. Sometimes we don't necessarily think of that. Again, in corporate, we're trained, we have processes, we have meetings, we have hierarchy, and people are the power of any organization. But sometimes on the farm, we take that for granted because we're family and we don't even think of that as the important thing. And I think there's such magic in focusing on the people on your farm or in your company because we might not stop and realize how important that is. And at the end of the day, if we're dad or mom running the farm, we have such a huge opportunity to impact our children and our farm workers, and we don't even think of it, right?
Mm. And that I think that's something we'll probably touch on a fair bit in this conversation is that, often in agriculture, our boss or our 2IC or whatever is often our life partner as well.
Yeah.
And so there can be a really really huge or a really significant impact on knowing, which hat you're wearing in each conversation and how that flows through into farm and family life. I said before, like my founding philosophy was people are the power of agriculture, and we in this business, in this industry, we are super good at talking about the production side of the business,
Mhm.
the kilograms of beef or kilograms of beef per hectare, the milk solids, the in your North American language, bushels. We don't use that over here. But the people stuff, not so much. And I find that ironic because it really is the people that drive the production in this industry. And, that people power starts with us as leaders, whether you've actually got the title of a leader or not, it starts with us. And there's a big thing around self-awareness that, again, I'm sure we'll get more into in this conversation as well.
And again, I'm focusing more to the farm end and always take the conversation where you want to go, Sally. But
Mm.
you look at it more important than anything, farm owners, and we do a lot of succession, and we're going to touch on that later. As individuals that work together as family and business, we really have that opportunity to make it a great workplace and probably onus on us to do it because here's the thing, we can't get rid of each other. If we work
Mm.
together on a day-to-day basis, spouse or parent to child, brothers, whatever the situation is, there's almost even more of an onus to make to be diligent in communicating and leading, right? Because corporate, super important, but you can leave. Family,
Yeah.
you're kind of stuck together. So I wanted to ask you, as farm owners, how can we improve communication and engagement within our team when that's not something that we think about?
Yeah, a great question, Tracy. Communication is something that we talk a lot about in agriculture. What we don't talk so much about is the team engagement. So perhaps if I could indulge with a quick definition of what I believe team engagement is, I believe that team engagement is about a group of people who are committed to a common cause and they're happy to work together to achieve business objectives. And there's actually research out there in the people management or HR world which comes from Gallup that says that a leader, whether you have that title or not, a leader is responsible for 70% variance in team engagement. And that can be either positive or it can be negative. So imagine if we had something that was going to impact our production in farming by 70%, we'd be doing something about that pretty quickly, wouldn't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's insane.
Yeah. And I've heard one of your previous guests, Elaine Fraze, talk about the study from Virginia Tech University, which has actually put some data around the importance of communication. And that particular study looked at family farming businesses and looked at the common success factors, I suppose. And those businesses that held regular team meetings,
Mhm.
they communicated well, and they gave everybody an opportunity to have a say or a contribution. They didn't necessarily have to have a decision, but they needed to be able to have a say. Those sort of businesses were 21% more profitable than those that didn't.
Wow.
So, if we had the opportunity to increase our productivity by 21% without not much of an investment, to me, that seems like a pretty good return on investment to me. I don't know what you think, Tracy, but it certainly sounds pretty good to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those numbers are staggering. And if you think of it at this point, producers are such good producers at getting more bushels. I'll speak North American here. And then at getting more pounds per calf or whatever our metric is on our farm. Like even a 5% gain is leaps and bounds. But who actually thinks about, hey, if I was a better leader and made this a better place, my children, grandchildren, brother could work better and we could have a 20% increase. I think you said that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that piece around team engagement and communication also comes back to understanding what you can control and what you can't control. I wish I had a whiteboard right at this moment so I could do some drawings for you, Tracy, and for your audience. But if you imagine a circle, right, and inside this circle is things that you can control as a leader. So the way that you show up, the way that you communicate, the culture that you create, your systems, processes, policies, procedures, all of that stuff that you have control over as a leader or a manager. And then there's stuff outside of that, other people's reactions, behaviors, the way that they're showing up, the way that they're communicating. And so if we can focus on what we can control as leaders, that's a really important step forward. And I'll drill a little bit more on culture. There was some recent research that come out of, actually the name of the organization just skips me at the moment, but um, some important data around culture. And what that said was that culture, um, your employees, whether they're paid or unpaid family members, think of it in a team perspective. Employees are 10.4 times more likely to leave a bad culture than they are for money reasons. Like
Yeah.
10.4, like that just, I don't know about you, but that blows my mind. Like I knew it was high, but to actually have some data around that to really understand the significance of culture just, yeah,
Hmm.
rocks my socks.
Yeah. And Sally, I'm sure you're going to notice. I want to go somewhere with this because I think it's relevant to farming and to corporate. I'm going to talk about generations too. Like
Mm,
the
yeah.
generations have changed. My grandfather to my father's generation and the mother version of that too. But I'm just thinking the farming lineage to myself, even to going to my sister, who is 10 years younger than me.
Mm,
Culture is a thing. And generations coming up that are on the farm and coming up aren't wired the same as some of us. Not that we're older, but previous, some of the farm founders right now. And that alludes to what you're saying. Culture is important. They're not just going to stick on a farm because they're supposed to. They're not going to do a job because of the money. They
mm.
are invested in culture. That stuff is so important, right?
Yeah, culture and purpose. The data out there in the HR world says that culture and purpose are the main success factors in people staying in a business. So you've really touched on a really important point there, Tracy.
Well, and thinking about it when I started my career, it's like get to your desk, get to work, you work for money and be happy, right? Now it's wired different and making sure that we are speaking a culture is so important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, generational stuff is probably one of the most well, I'd say probably the top two, re one of the top two reasons that I get called in to support
Mm.
businesses here in Australia is just that difference between the different generations in how they think, act, and communicate. I've got an infographic that I often will show my clients, which looks at the different generations and the experiences that they've had from politicians
Ooh.
to the way to leadership to um, music, technology, cars, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to give my age away too much, Tracy, but I'm of that generation where, you know, my the biggest piece of technology in my day was a Walkman.
Yeah, me
You know,
too.
and a lot a lot of the people that I'm working with, you know, they're in what's the word I'm trying to say? The way that they access music was through a record, for example, and
Yeah.
now it's on one of these things. Like, you know, it's so much has changed over time, and I love talking about the generational stuff when I work with clients or when I'm doing a guest presentation, because it's not uncommon in this day and age to have five different generations working in a business at the same time. Like that is actual reality, five generations working in a business.
Wow.
And what I really try and highlight to clients or anyone that will listen to me actually, um, is that, you know, understanding the differences between each generation is so important. I got really tired at one point of the older generation saying that the younger generation were just lazy and self-centered and entitled. And on the flip side of that, I got tired of the younger generation saying that the older generation were just dinosaurs stuck in their ways and that they were never ever going to change. And that's where I found that particular infographic where I bring into these conversations now. And perhaps if your audience are interested in them, we could link it up somehow
Yeah,
um,
sure.
to this podcast. It is Australian based, but it's yeah, it does give you a good insight into the particular generations. And I guess my main message on this piece around generational understanding is that if we take the time to understand each other, respect our differences, respect the diversity of experience that each generation can bring to the table, we are going to get um, more engaged workforces, better productivity, and better business performance at the end of the day. And, you know, if that sort of stuff can sit on the bottom line, we're all the better for it, I think.
Hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So we've tiptoed onto this already. Common challenges that you see in family farming businesses, because blending business and family is a whole nother level of business. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I I want to start by saying, Tracy, that in my opinion, I don't think there's any more powerful economic contributor than a family farming business that works well together.
Mm, yeah.
You know, if you've got a good family farming business working in the community, not only are they, you know, that hopefully they're paying their team right, they've got good engagement, they're contributing to their community through sponsorship or extra activities or whatever that looks like. Just no more powerful economic driver. And I think sometimes the challenge lies, we touched on this before, Tracy, like sometimes the challenge lies in where your boss is also your life partner
Mm.
or your business partner is your life partner. Like, you know, that the conflict happens, I think, when there's not a foundation in place. And the piece I love to talk about when it comes to looking at the challenges is the work of Patrick Leccioni. I hope I've pronounced that name right, but
Mhm.
Patrick talks about like five dysfunctions of a team.
Mm.
And so he talks about, you know, and it's like a pyramid. Like at the bottom of that pyramid is like an absence of trust. If you don't have trust, you know, people can't express that they've made a mistake, for example. Like I'm really gonna go over this very quick and dirty. There's a fear of conflict. There's a lack of commitment. There's avoidance of accountability, and there's an inattention to results. And all of those five core components make up the dysfunctions of a team. Without, you know, trust at the very foundation of that, if we don't have trust,
Yes.
We don't have anything, do we?
No. No.
No.
No. That's a because I'm going straight to succession planning. My brain goes there, and whether that's trust of anything that you do with your farm family members, but I go to succession planning. If you're the next generation wanting to come up and you want to take ownership and you're getting ignored and the conversation isn't honored, there's no trust there, and then that can spiral. And sorry, I took that down a rabbit trail, but that's just a trust to me is incredibly important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's as I said before, if you don't have trust, you don't have anything. You can't build on those next things to work out how to navigate conflict, to work out how to build accountability into your system, and so on and so on.
Well, and then if you don't have the trust, then there's resentment and then there's ill will and then isn't that just a spiral of emotions too? And then
Yeah.
how is that for the farm? And actually what we'll go into next, you often speak about the link between human performance and business performance. And if
Mm.
we don't have the trust and there's ill will, that's going to affect the human performance that affects the business performance. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I want to talk about that from an investment point of view. Like I think this, that link between human and business performance and how not investing in your team can really damage not
Mm,
only the culture but also the performance. In my mind, that investment is not a nice to have anymore. Like once upon a time, the businesses that did best practice, they would include a line item in their budget for people strategy or skills and training. And I just don't see that. It's not a common thing, but I think that's something that we need to focus more on, making sure that there is, let's call it 5% line item in there for skills and training and upskilling. Because when people feel valued and supported, and they're also equipped to grow, they bring more energy, they bring more commitment to the team. And, things like you'll get problems solved faster and they stay longer. And employee engagement, I think, is another important thing to talk about. It's a topic that I love talking about when I do presentations because it really demonstrates the link between human and business performance. So, if you could imagine, there are two types of employees, right? So you've got an engaged employee. So an engaged employee is somebody who is probably the first person through the gate of a morning. They do whatever it takes to get the job done. They build team cohesiveness and they're just the glue that keeps everything together. If you've got a disengaged employee, these are the sort of people that will just do enough essentially to stay off the boss's radar in exchange for a paycheck at the end of the week. And the difference between engaged employee and disengaged employee is said to be about 30%. So if you could imagine that, if you've got a disengaged employee in your business and they exit the business for whatever reason, either you sack them or they self-select themselves out of the business, trying to bring somebody new in to build them up to an engaged employee, like there's that difference of 30%, but it can actually take you up to 12 months to bring that new employee up to speed. So that the productivity loss in that time is said to be anywhere between 30 and 200%.
ooh, yes. Yeah. I seen that actually when I was hiring, when I was trying to build a team for my media company for a marketer. They say the original mistake, if you hire wrong, you don't just lose the money of the wage, you lose all that lost time, the interruption, and that all that time that you lost, right? If you're working with them,
Mm.
training them, and it doesn't work out, it's huge.
Yeah. Well, if you consider like the HR data says that the average recruitment process takes anywhere from 90 to 120 days. So if you are picking the wrong people and bringing them and inducting them into your business on a regular basis, like that can have a really significant impact also.
Well, and if you look at it from the farm end too, so you're hiring a farmhand, let's say, and You want to create engagement, you want to keep them because, oh my goodness, you just probably found, if you can find a farmhand that has farm knowledge, amen. But I think you're going to know better than even I do here on the show. I don't talk about HR that much. It is hard to find good labor, let alone farm background labor. So you hire somebody, a farmhand, you take all that time teaching them something they didn't grow up with, and
Mm,
then all of a sudden you lose that person because they're not engaged, and then you
yeah,
got to restart that. Wow, that's huge.
yeah, yeah, it is. It is.
Huh. Well, and then that affects the bottom line, the business performance, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Did you want to say anything else on there before we move to how to create strong habits and traits of strong farm leaders?
Um, I think I'd just like to add to that to say that, also the research says that the average recruitment process costs anywhere between 18 and $22,000. So again, if you're getting bringing the wrong people in, investing in the wrong people, and expecting to get great things out of them, then that's another significant impact on the bottom line as well.
So, we're talking about team performance, human performance, and how that connects to the business performance. And then that connects to the questions we were talking about before, engagement and all that. So, if we are a leader of one, a leader of five or 10, no matter what our organization is or size, how do we develop traits, habits? How do we become a good leader that motivates, encourages, keeps people on our team?
Yeah. I've there's a saying out there, it's a really beautiful saying that before you lead others, first you need to learn yourself.
Mm.
And again, I've probably butchered that, but you get the essence of what I'm trying to say there. I think strong leaders are able to think clearly, they act decisively, they care deeply about their people. These sort of people build trust, they communicate well, and they make learning a part of everyday work. Developing these skills, I think, is a natural part of building that self-awareness and taking the time to reflect on how your decisions impact others, the impact that you have on other people. Some people just don't have that self-awareness around the presence that they bring to a team. I'll give you an example. I was at a meeting in Australia's capital yesterday, and this lady who was a very direct sort of person comes straight up to me, and she didn't even say hello to me or say how you doing or how's the weather or anything like that. She just went right straight to this is what I've got to say, and I was really confronted by that. She didn't have any self-awareness of what was going on. Um, I was probably a little bit hypersensitive, pro as you know, Tracy, but for the audience's benefit, like I've recently just lost my mum,
Mm.
and so I was in a really emotional and
Mm.
vulnerable sort of state, and it was for me, it was I was just focusing on breathing and putting one foot in front of the other. But yeah, this lady just didn't have any awareness other than the mission that she had to talk about at that particular point in time. And that's okay, but she doesn't have to know what's going on in my world, but perhaps a little bit of emotional intelligence or self-awareness might have told her that there was something else at play there. Um, Also, like leadership is, I think we said it before, Tracy, but leadership is not about a position. To me, it's about a behavior. And
Yeah.
I think farmers or leaders, whether you're leading a team of one or whether you're leading a team of 500, you can build that by investing in continuous learning, mentoring your younger staff, creating regular check-ins, or even toolbox talks about how to communicate part of what you need to get done on the farm on that particular day. So yeah, like self-awareness, I think is a really big one. Understanding the impact that you have on others is really super important if you want to be effective in what you're doing.
Yeah, I like that. And sometimes in the corporate world, I think we think of that ish.
Mm. Ish.
Maybe not all the time, and depending on your personality. I was probably laughing with you because I'm a fairly direct person and I'm aware, and sometimes need to remember that different personalities aren't as direct, which I'm okay owning. That's my gift and my baggage in life to work on, right? But also realizing at the farm level too, just because your dad, I'm thinking of probably 3 to 4 farm founders that I know. And I'm thinking of this one who's an absolute like devil, Tasmanian devil to the kid on the farm.
Yeah.
No awareness, just barking out orders. And then this one, a variation of that. And then this one who is totally not a communicator and avoids communicator. And then I think of this farm founder dad or leader who's just, how do you say that? Outside of themselves, considerate, mentoring. You know what? You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
making sure that they are, well, being considerate of others, not just barking orders to get it done on the farm, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you've owned that, Tracy. Like
Yeah.
you are self-aware. Like you
Yeah.
understand that, you're a more direct personality and that others around you might be different. And I often see with the clients that I work with, like a one partner is really direct, forward, go out there, get it done, don't worry about anything else. They're so task driven. And then you've got somebody on the opposite end of the spectrum in the partnership that is a little bit more laid back, is a little bit more likes to reflect on how they make decisions, and they make decisions at a slower pace, and everything else as a result is at a slower pace as well. And so you've got this polarity of speed versus slow down.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes cause conflict in a business. But understanding that we all think, act, and communicate in different ways, and not saying one is better than the other because they're not. We're just different.
Yeah.
Just understanding those differences can make the hugest of difference in how a team performs well together.
I like that. And I owned it vulnerable in a vulnerable manner because I'm thinking of a lot of founders, and we can have a lot of founders that have that energy or the I don't want to talk about it, and looping to building teams, working with our family, if we don't know those things and we're not self-aware, my goodness, we're not only ruining the workplace, corporate, or the farm, but we're ruining relationships and we don't even know it. And the reason I bring these topics up and also owned it is because in corporate, in a lot of our settings, if you're in marketing or sales, they give you training on this so that
Mm,
you can see who's across from you and go, okay, well, they don't want to just get into a deep communication. This individual needs more time to process. Like we get that training in corporate a lot of times, but on farms, you don't get that. And you're working with
mm,
family, and there can be some huge dysfunctions if we aren't self-aware. And you can just, I'll repeat what I said before. You can just ruin the family farm by not being aware. And
mm.
you just also, on top of that, you just ruin relationships, right? Because you have no self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
little deep.
absolutely.
It's a little deep, I think.
It's deep, yeah, but it's also important. It's having emotional safety in your team, whether you're a family farming business or a corporate is super important. And I think, we get that in corporate. Like I've been in the corporate world also, and also in the family farming side of it. Um, yeah, we do get that training because a lot of our in the corporate world, it's about sales or it's about meeting KPIs and things like that. And so understanding that, having that knowledge in your toolkit is really important. Um, I think the thing is that a lot of certainly what I'm seeing here in Australia, I don't know if it's the same in North America, but what I see is a lot of kids go to their ag colleges or their universities, they come back onto the farm and they come straight back to the farm. They don't actually go out and get some real world experience. And what I see is those individuals that take the time to work off farm, um, you know, I always say to clients, 5 years minimum.
Mm, yep.
Go and get some experience elsewhere. Understand leadership, how you like to be led, how you like to lead others. Because I think you can, even if you get a run of bad bosses, those bad bosses can actually teach you more about the way that you want to be as a leader. And so when you come back onto the farm and you succeed, or the transition from that, from the roles and responsibilities into management, then into ownership, down the track, you you have a far more successful business. That's what I see in my clients. Those clients is that let me start again. Those clients that have taken that time to go and get some real world experience off farm with other people are far more successful in the long run than those that don't.
I want to piggyback off those words you shared because I wanted to ask you about that. And again, it's not going to be a farm level, but I think it is. Like in the workplace, we're not allowed to say certain things because you get fired. There's HR regulations. You get fired. You have to act in a certain manner in the workplace. The
Yeah.
beauty of the farm and the danger of the farm is you get to act in a way that is different from a workplace. So, amen to the beautiful part about that, that you get to
Mm.
just operate a little different and outside the confines of the workplace. But let's go to the dark side of that. You talk about psychological safety, and you just said it. And I think
Mm.
that builds perfectly on what we were talking about. Do you want to share your thoughts on that and how it relates to the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. Psychological safety for me is one of those really beautiful topics. Like I don't know, again, I don't know what it's like in North America, but here in Australia, we've recently had laws come into place where psychological safety is actually legislated. It's not just a nice to have or a soft and fluffy anymore.
Oh,
Um, Psychological safety is employers have the responsibility to make sure that their team are both physically and psychologically safe.
oh my.
So, so that's the first part of that. When we've got psychological safety, basically, if I was working in your team, Tracy, and I had psychological safety, I would have the safety to say, Tracy, I don't understand what you just said. Can you please re-explain that to me? I don't agree with what you just said, Tracy. Can I offer a different opinion? That's psychological safety. And I want to, I've got two parts to this. One, I want to tell you a story, if I may. I'll try and do it in the shortest way possible, but a story that really reflects psychological safety actually is best demonstrated through a client that I had when I first started my business about 12 years ago. This client had called me in. I'd worked with them through a recruiting process, brought a team member in. They'd been performing super well. And one day, out of the blue, probably 8 months, 9 months later, I got a phone call from them. And basically, the conversation went a little bit something like this: Sally, need you at my kitchen table at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. I need to sack this bloke.
Oh,
And I was left really bewildered by this conversation because all the feedback that I'd got up until that particular point had been really positive. They were just so excited about how this individual was performing in their business and how they'd fitted in and integrated into their culture. And so anyway, I arrived at the client's table that following Tuesday at 2 p.m. and I sat there for an hour as I listened to everything that they had to say about this individual. And mostly they were around communication, like they were getting emails and text messages from this employee late at night. They were getting phone calls during the day despite the work instructions being issued on an app. So we're talking two properties about an hour away from each other. And yeah, so it was all around communication. And so I sat there and I listened, and what I was starting to formulate in my mind was something that wasn't an intentional behavior issue that was showing up for them. After that hour, I asked them one simple question that changed the entire course of that conversation. And that question was, have you ever considered that this employee has challenges with reading and writing?
Oh,
And they completely stopped in their tracks. The guy in this particular partnership almost dropped his coffee on the floor. I'm glad he didn't. It was tile floor, would have made a hell of a mess.
yeah.
But but they stopped in their tracks, and once they regained themselves and got themselves back into the conversation, they said, "We cannot believe that we did not pick up on this. We have a child that was in a private education system in primary school. They just identified that he had challenges with reading and writing, and so they had all the tools and resources there that they could have used with this particular employee had they known that was actually a problem." So previous to this particular conversation, the clients and I had actually been talking about doing a 360-degree review process. So for those out there that are not familiar with a 360, essentially in a nutshell, it's the opportunity for everybody in the team to sit down and have a conversation about what's working well, what's not working well, and it's a conversation about how you can bridge some of those gaps. And so this actually gave me the perfect opportunity to sit with this individual and understand from their perspective what was going on. When I do my 360s, I always give the person that I'm interviewing a simple one-pager a piece of paper, and that is just just to record some of the conversation that we have or any actions that might need to be taken as a result of this conversation. And as I slid that piece of paper across the shearing shed smoko room on that particular afternoon, and I asked this individual to write his own name with five-letter word, two of the letters were the same. His hesitation in writing his own name in front of me was enough to confirm to me that we were actually on the right track with reading and writing or literacy. And so as I had a conversation with him that day and I understood what his side of the story was, he told me that despite he could read and write, but his proficiency was really low. It was probably more at a mid-primary school level. Um, and so he what he told me that particular afternoon is something that will stick with me for a very long time. And as a parent, it literally breaks my heart. He said that despite living on the property and despite his homestead being literally 600 meters away from the shearing shed smoko room, he would make sure that he cut his lunch every day. He had all his meal breaks in the shearing shed smoko room, and that he wouldn't come home until after 7 p.m. of an evening because he knew by that time his two little boys, who were both under 5 at that stage, would be in bed and fast asleep, and that he would not have to read them a story. I
Wow.
know. I'm surprised I got through that story without cracking because it really does have an emotional impact on me. Um, what I learned was that what was happening, why the clients were getting emails and text messages late at night was because not because he was being inefficient in his job, it's because he was going home and downloading to his wife everything that had happened during the day, and his wife was the one that was creating the emails and text messages to help him meet the performance criteria of his job. And so I tell that story for one of two reasons. One, behavior is actually communication too. So if you've got somebody in your team that is showing up in a way that they're not typically showing up or have not typically shown up in the past, perhaps there's a story behind that. Perhaps there's a reason why they're not performing the way that they should be. And again, I'm not sure on the North American stats, but here in Australia, 43% of Australians cannot read or write to a primary school, upper primary school level.
Oh, wow.
So what you see out there in the broader world, we're actually going to see in our workplaces. So if you could grab your relevant data, and lay that over this conversation, you'd get a good perspective on that.
Wow.
I
Wow.
think another one, I'm probably indulging a little bit here, Tracy,
Please,
but
I love it. I love it.
this is an area I'm really passionate about because, when we've got mentally healthy people working in our business that feel psychologically safe, not only is there a business performance uptake, for the want of a better word, it's nicer to be at work. It's nicer to work within that team. And I want to really shine the light on two grassroots organizations here in Australia that I really admire for their impact on mental health and well-being in rural and regional Australia. And the first one of those is an organization called Sober in the Country. This is a national charity that's been going for about 10 or 11 years now, led by an incredible lady called Shanna Wan. And she advocates that she talks about alcohol in the bush. And so she talks about it's okay to say no. This organization or this charity is not about being prohibitionist, saying it's never okay to drink. It's advocating that it's your individual choice. If you feel the need to cut back or not partake in alcohol at all, then that's okay. So I, shout out to Shanna, incredible person. I've recently just come back from a workshop that she's held on, bringing that message out to rural and regional Australia. And the other person that I want to really highlight is a lady called Alex Thomas in South Australia. She's got a campaign called Plant a Seed for Safety. And basically, her business or her remit is to inspire rural communities to prioritize safety and well-being through storytelling, education, and practical action. And so, yeah, she's got a great campaign at the moment, which is called "Save a Life, Listen to Your Wife," which is all about rural men in particular. I don't want to isolate anyone, but rural men in particular, hold on to those things, probably take unnecessary risks in the day-to-day bit of the business. And I just think it's really important that organizations like this get the light shone on them for the amazing work that they're doing in building emotional and psychological safety in rural and regional areas, not only here in Australia but globally.
Wow. That story, wow, that kind of hit home. You don't think of these things, right? I think,
Mm,
what do they always say? We're always operating our life from what we know, from our perception. We, I would assume for the most part, we always think people are like us, know like us, believe like us, read like us,
yeah,
think so. When you're a leader, who would have even thought? And now you
mm,
look how many people on farms, like we just don't know what's going through somebody's head and why they're acting that way when we could quickly go, well, they're just being insubordinate or they're just being rude or they're being
yeah,
aggressive. What is in their head? You
yeah,
don't know, right?
yeah. What's gone on before they've stepped through your gate?
Yeah.
Have they had some bad news delivered to them? Have they had an argument with their partner? Did their did their kids run amok this morning when they were trying to get them to school and get to work? There's so much that underpins how people show up. And yeah, just my encouragement is to understand that behavior is communication too. If you take nothing else away from our conversation today, I think that's one of the key points there.
Sally, I want to go one deeper on the psychological safety, okay? I have never really heard that term. And I don't think of it from that aspect from your world. But I'm thinking here, my goal with the show, I love family farms. I think it's the most beautiful opportunity. And there's some amazing things with it. but there is some huge challenges economically, economically, financially. I always say the communication, again, I do a lot of transition planning, and I always say the communication, that's the biggest piece. Why doesn't dad or
Yeah.
mom want to talk about it? Well, I'll ask you a question about that in a second. But if we want, truly, if we're a farm founder or second generation, and we want the farm to continue on, not only does it need to be financially viable, it needs to be a good place to go. And again, looking at those different farm founders that I know, the danger, and a lot, I could just hear the men in the audience going, psychological safety. Do you know what my grandpa used to do to my dad? Or, I could see that. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, how yucky, and and it might even be so normalized on some farms where there's just hot tempers. Elaine, I'm thinking of her. She said swearing's not okay. How many families there's hot tempers, swearing, like physical or like verbal abuse? Is
Mm.
that a safe farm to go to? And one deeper, and
Mm.
I want to get your thoughts on this. When we work with family, we're also dealing with baggage from the past. And I find that can be very toxic because
Mm.
naturally the parent treats the kid as the kid. There's that lack of respect. They don't realize they're an adult. But also, I think with family, there's that let go of the past. And if we're working with family and dad or brother or sister are bringing up mistakes or bad habits or things that happen because we're family. That's not off limit, right? In the workplace, you wouldn't be like, I'm sure you were this way when you were a teenager. Like, you just don't do that. Here, you can't separate. Your workmates have all your past history and mistakes. So if you're
Mm.
coming to a farm where you don't feel psychologically safe, what kind of place is that to be, right? Sorry,
Mm.
that was really big. I don't even know what you want to comment on that, but I know this is going to be quite unpopular because I could hear this big burly guy saying, suck it up, buttercup. But also,
Yeah.
really, we can do better in this day and age. And a lot of Gen 2, they don't want to deal with that garbage. Do they even
Mm.
want to come back to the farm? We want to make it inviting. Is it safe? Right?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's a conversation we could probably have this whole podcast episode on.
Yeah.
I think, to wrap up this particular question, there's research out there that says that the average person spends about 2.5 hours a day in drama, and probably family farming businesses, we could add another half an hour onto that and still be quite safe in that piece of data integrity. But if you think about, like, drama shows up in a business or a team, again, whether you're a team of two or whether you're a team of 2,000, it shows up in ways like insubordinance, resisting change, arguing, swearing and cursing at each other, complaining about a situation, second guessing, having to redo work because of poor communication in the first place. If you add that 2.5 hours a day, let's use that as the figure, across your team, across the week, the months, the year, and you count, like, a very quick and dirty calculation here in Australia, if I calculated that 2.5 hours a day per employee across the year, times by the minimum wage,
Ooh,
it would quickly add up to just under $15,000 per person per year in lost productivity. So
wow.
it's something that that self-leadership piece that we spoke about before. But yeah, we also need to do the work to work on our own baggage so that we can show up in our teams, whether we're a leader or whether we're an integral part of that team as an operator, to be the best versions and best, well, to be the best and most evolved versions of ourselves that we can be.
Mm,
I think that's squarely on our shoulders.
yeah. Way to bring that in. That was a powerful ending. I just opened that up a big can of worms, and you just like really summarized that quite nicely. So, that's the thing with these conversations. There's just so many angles to it. And each one of
Yeah,
these questions that we're talking about, we could probably do a whole episode on every single one of them, right?
definitely, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Sally, I have really enjoyed this conversation and talking about leadership and team building and performance and safety and a lot of these really important conversations. I want to switch gears with you a little bit as we work to wrap up and get your thoughts about succession planning because all these things that we're talking about kind of weave together. It's a tough conversation for farm families. Do you want to
Mm.
share some thoughts and strategies? Take that where you want to go.
Mm. Another can of worms there, Tracy.
Woo!
Look, you get into that succession and transition conversation, whatever terminology you want to use, and you could really go anywhere. I think this can be tough because it's hard because it's not only about transitioning a role or management or assets. It's about the legacy and identity. I think that's the really important piece there. Often I will go into farming businesses, family farming businesses, where there's been resistance to succession or transition because the founder generation don't have an identity outside of the farm because the farm has been their life for since forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, other than perhaps like a bowls club or a local watering hole or something like that, there's been no life outside of the farm. And I think where where it goes best, where these conversations go best is where it's treated as an ongoing conversation. And again, I know you've had some incredible guests on this topic of communication in the succession and transition space. So I don't want to go too much or take any light away from those particular conversations. But I think encouraging like mentoring between the generations, getting really clear on the role clarity. Like role clarity for me is absolutely the essence to this conversation, making sure that processes are fair and transparent and not rushing it and making this a secretive or secret squirrel sort of conversation. Having the courage to start the conversations. And I have a saying in what I do, early, ugly, often.
Mm-hmm.
Like the conversations don't have to be perfect. You just have to start them. You have to continue, have that commitment to continuing on those conversations. And I think the other thing that I would add to this particular conversation would be around assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
The old saying, actually scrub this out if I can't say this, but
I think you might be reading my mind. Say it and we'll leave it. Yeah, go ahead.
you say it because it's on your
No,
shoulders.
no, go ahead because I think I might butcher it. You have full permission because I'm sure we're reading each other's mind. Go ahead, Sally.
Okay, again, I'm happy if you delete this, but assumption is like makes an ass out of you and me.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
just so fraught with danger. I think sometimes if we're worried about having those particular conversations, the story that we bring in our mind about how the conversation is going to play out can just be as dangerous as the fear of actually understanding what the other person is thinking or feeling. A really really recent example of this is clients that I was working with just 2 weeks ago. They highlighted that they needed to have a conversation about exiting some people out of the business and starting afresh, which required succession to be a part of that conversation. And the story that they were bringing in the absence of data, like data, I mean like the actual conversational feedback that they were going to get from the other person at the other end of this conversation, did their head in more than hearing the answer that they needed from the other person. So yeah, assumption is a really yeah, again fraught with danger.
Yeah, so
Um
dangerous.
Yeah, it is very dangerous, very dangerous. And I think that's the thing as individuals, in the absence of data, we make up a story. And it's important, I think, in these conversations that if you can even say to yourself, like going into these conversations that require courage, is what is the story that I'm telling myself going into this conversation? What am I bringing into this conversation that I don't need to bring? What emotional energy, physical energy, how am I showing up for this conversation? And I always will tell clients that if you are not in the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional position to have the conversation that you need to have, whether it's a succession conversation, whether it's a performance management conversation, hold off. Don't do anything while you're angry. Don't
Mm,
do anything while you're hungry, sleep deprived, all of that stuff.
yep.
Hold off, get yourself into the best position that you can, and then have the conversation. Because, yeah, emotion will always take over from logic if you don't get that right.
Isn't that unbelievable? As you're speaking, I'm realizing that I need to do more on the HR and the communication and that end on my show because I fully believe, just like I always say in succession, it's not the wills or the estates, it's the communication and the dynamics and all of that that's actually the problem.
Yeah.
If we look at farm family business, if we look at any relationship, I'll put myself out there again. There has been many times, I'm getting better as I get older, where I assume the worst of the other person's intentions. I'm not a bad person. I, I'll say that. I'm not a bad person. I love these people that maybe I'm having conflict with, but sometimes we get in our own head and the assumption, we assume the worst out of the other
Mm.
person's intention. And that's not where they're at all, right? And how often does that happen with farm family business? Because not only are we coworkers, but we have a whole lot of history and baggage and
Yeah.
assumptions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Another very quick tool that I would offer yourself and your listeners is to ask yourself, when you do have a conversation that doesn't quite go the way that it should have done, or you thought it should have done, or somebody's behaving in a way that is inconsistent with the way that they've been showing up, ask yourself the question, what is the most generous lens that I could lay over this particular situation? You know,
Beautiful.
again, behavior is communication. Like I've said that a couple of times in this episode, but understanding what's going on for somebody else under the surface is just absolutely paramount to having a successful team.
What is the most generous lens I could lay over? How do you say it again? Do you mind?
What is the most generous lens that you could lay over this situation or conversation, whatever it is for you?
Oh, isn't that nice? That's powerful. You look at everything and it's hard to do. Maybe me and my personality or me just being in my world, we all have our thoughts, goals, beliefs, intentions, plans. Even to this day, I find it hard to get out of myself, and then that takes some thoughtfulness, right? And
Mm.
I like to try and be thoughtful. I'll throw myself under the bus, but also say I'm not the worst at this. But it still takes a lot of maturity, is that the word? To go, stop. Okay, Tracy, this is your view. What is the most thoughtful lens we could lay over this situation? Why is
Mm.
dad doing this? Farm founder dad doing this?
Yeah,
That would change all communication, wouldn't it?
it would be. It's a game changer. It really is. It's something that I've used in my personal professional life, and it's completely changed the outcome or the perspective that I've gained from whatever that situation or conversation has been.
Ooh, Sally, you're good at this stuff. You really
You're
are.
super kind.
Oh, you are good. And I think this is the magic. Not that any of us are bad. I actually personally, I'm curious if you agree. I don't think we are taught enough about communication and conflict management. Like if I was to redo the school system, this is bold, but I would love to see like one whole class. And I can't remember how school works and I don't have kids, but one whole class all the time through every grade about communication and age appropriate, where you learn how to communicate, you learn how to fight, air quotes, conflict. We just don't learn that. So then we're thrown to the wolves and we need an adult based on what we were brought up with. And holy Dinah,
Yeah.
it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally endorse your comments there, but I would also add, Tracy, that I would love to see like financial literacy added to the education system,
Hmm.
because financial literacy through the education system would make a huge difference in business and industry productivity, I believe.
Wouldn't it? Amen. Amen, soul sister. We're we sure I am totally on that. That's kind of one of the pillars of this show too, like helping farmers do good financially, right? So I love this. Okay, this has been a big conversation and we've kind of jumped, which is good. Great. And we covered a lot of ground, a lot of new words and ways to think about things. I think this is a magic sauce that would really help improve a lot of farm operations, right? Like big gains. Sally, we have covered a lot in this conversation and a lot of different points, which is great because it's a big conversation, a lot of value in here. If you have anything to add to touch on any of those points, please go ahead. If not, I'm going to ask you to leave our audience with some final words of wisdom on building a strong farm or corporate team. Whoever's listening, they can listen with their lens, but do you want to leave our audience with some final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I do. I'd love, there's two or three points that I would love to leave your audience with. The first of those is as a farm leader or a corporate leader, whatever space you're working in, make sure that your team knows the why, the
Mm,
purpose. Why does this business exist? What is, other than to produce X amount of bushels per hectare or pounds of beef or whatever? What is the true why of what gets you out of bed every morning? Why you operate the business? Purpose-driven businesses are far more profitable than those that don't have a purpose. So that would be my first point. My second point would be, um, the shared purpose, I think, turns a group of individuals into a team.
mm, yep.
I think that's a really important, just those words there are really important defining points. A group of individuals into a team. When they feel valued, they feel part of something bigger, there's more motivation, performance is better, and everything else just takes care of itself. And I think probably my most important message to your audience to in this episode, Tracy, would be to value the whole person and
Mm,
not just the part that makes you money.
mm, yeah. That's wow, that's powerful. Oh, Sally, that was good. Do you have anything else to add? I don't want our conversation to end. It's only 7:30 here in Manitoba, Canada. I have hours. And you're just getting started for your day, so
Yeah,
I'm
oh, well, we're
bugging.
11:30 in
Oh
Australia.
yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, no,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say no, I don't have anything to else to offer, I don't think.
On that note, I want to thank you because we have had a big, full conversation. I hope you've been okay for time. I kind of lost track of time. I've really appreciated our conversation and finally getting to know you. We've been communicating back and forth here for a while, so I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with our audience. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure, Tracy.
Oh, pleasure's mine. And for anybody in the audience that wants to connect with you, I'm going to put your website, your contact information in the show notes. So check it out on Farm Marketer. And yeah, big thanks, Sally. And thank you to you in the audience. If you enjoyed this as much as I did, like it, share it, get it out there. And we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.